Okay, you're live.
Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I hereby call the February meeting of the Audit Committee to order. It appears that all but Katie are present and accounted for. I have not heard from her. I assume she'll be a few minutes late, but let's see, wait a minute, let me open my phone. All right, first order of business is the review and approval of the Audit Committee agenda for Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. Yes, Ellie. You're on mute.
Thank you.
Glad to see somebody that happened to somebody else besides me.
I know, Ron, we rely on Rhonda to tell us. I motion that we approve today's agenda.
All right.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that the agenda be approved. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and there are none opposed. Let's see. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from last month? From January, is it 16th, I believe? Yeah, 19th, excuse me.
I move that we approve those incredible, awesome, thorough minutes.
Yes, they are. Second by Jim.
I third it.
Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is educational topic speaker. And that we have with us this morning, our head of the Department of Public Works, Mr. Michael Johnson. He has been here for less than a year, but things seem to be running very smoothly. And Mr. Johnson, tell us about your department.
I was muted, sorry. Good morning, Alderman, and members of the committee.
Good morning.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. And
we just act like we're dead. We're really
not at all. Not at all. So the Public Works Department has about 97, by its table of organization, 97 full-time equivalent staff. And we're organized into several administrative groups. And there's administration, that's like the director's office and support staff, engineering and construction, and we're both located at 145 Gorman Street. We also have streets, traffic control and maintenance, facilities, utilities who deals with our sanitary and stormwater conveyance systems, and the water plant, which generates and distributes potable water for the citizens of Annapolis and others who may be outside the city who purchase city water. We have several vacancies. We have about 12 vacancies according to the table of organization, but we do not have immediate plans to fill those vacancies, all of those vacancies, as we are able to function with some vacancies open, present, that staff are adequately cross-trained to allow us to not have a need to sort of fill those positions. And that is something that we're sensitive to, particularly in the COVID era where budgets are strained, right? We're not making excessive demands on the city government for additional funding. Now, several of our key services are funded through enterprise funds. We have 4 enterprise funds. That we have a sewer fund, which deals with the conveyance of the stormwater and sanitary effluent. We have a water fund, which supports our potable water operation, generation, distribution. We have a water restoration fund, and I'll speak more about that a bit later. But that's a large part of the mandate from the state of Maryland. And it's really tied, if we go back to the Federal Clean Water Act, which requires the elimination of non-point pollution sources as part of the preservation of the waters of the United States. It was a program that was started by President Nixon after the Cuyahoga River, if I pronounce it correctly, caught a fire. And when a river catches a fire, that's a warning sign that you need to get right in your life, to put it that way, right? That something is wrong with the way that you're sort of operating.
Yeah,
There were
that, but
yeah.
I'm not sure how many other members remember that.
It probably, I think it was, it predated the establishment of the EPA, just in reading some of the history. And that was the sort of genesis, the sort of the straw that broke the camel's back regarding the establishment of that. But the Clean Water Act has really sort of done wonders for the Chesapeake Bay. Chesapeake Bay used to silt very heavily, and we know that it's a commercial asset for the state of Maryland and other states, but particularly in Maryland. Not just for the seafood, but also as a boating resource, a recreational resource. And it was in pretty rough shape. And I would say that, the benefits of that program have sort of like proven themselves. And then we have a refuse fund, which deals with our solid waste collection. And that also is enterprise. That's our recycling and yard waste and trash that is collected. We have internal service funds, which are like our fleet replacement and fleet operation funds, but those are not really outward facing, so to speak. What I've observed and I'm sort of taking a look at this, as you mentioned, I've only been here, I think that somewhere around 6 months. So I'm not making sweeping changes to things within the department, which are running very smoothly and very professionally. But I observed that we have several key performance indicators. And I think that it was referenced that there was some interest in the committee sort of talking about those. Would that be?
Sure.
Okay, great. Okay, so in looking at some of the key performance indicators, I'll just kind of go through, just made some notes for myself. So let's get myself, okay. So for public works services and services provides, supports the streets, the traffic control and maintenance facilities, and is primarily responsible for snow and ice control. And their goal, one of their main goals, goal number 1 is to maintain clean and serviceable streets. A second goal is to provide functional city buildings in a cost-effective fashion. And one of the performance measures is for pothole-free streets. And it's sort of codified as the number of potholes to be repaired, the benchmark being 2,500 potholes each year. It's a good measure, but I might want to take a look at that and to sort of make some changes going forward. There are 2 ways in which you can approach a problem. You can sort of react to it, or you can try to be proactive. And my own observation, I think that, the theorists, if you will, for what it's worth, kind of point out that the cheaper way to really deal with that is not really the reactive way, but to be proactive. So if we can move our streets from, and we're not totally reactive, we are proactive, like we do have a robust paving program. But one of the things that I think that the city would benefit from, and I'm beginning to talk with engineering staff about it, is a pavement management program. And I'll just very briefly explain what that is. The pavement management program will allow us to not only assess the condition of the pavements, but also to be able to do what-if analysis as to what treatments would preserve the life of the network of roads. And over the life cycle of the road, over time, you will find that the cost associated with approaching it that way is a lot cheaper. And I'll just break it down very simply, that to repave a road may cost about $600,000 a mile, somewhere in that range. That's a fair figure. But if you could do more preventative maintenance on the road, you might defer that cost or avoid that cost or stretch it out over a longer period of time. It's much the way that you treat your car. You don't drive your car until the oil light comes on. You have periodic maintenance of oil changes and fluid changes and services and so on like that. And that preserves the life of your car for many years. It's the same sort of approach that is counterintuitive to the way that roads are dealt with in most PW departments. What they tend to do is to let the road fall apart. And then we have a road that is the worst condition. And then we use an approach that colloquially is called worst first. So Mrs. Smith screams, "My road is a mess." And then Public Works rushes out and puts it in the CIP, and they go to work and they kind of like rebuild the road. But that's quite expensive. There's a different way, and it's one that I established when I worked in Gaithersburg, and we were able to provide the council with an accurate budget figure that was needed to preserve, tied to a performance of the roads. Like, what condition of roads does the council want? Do you want perfect roads? $10 million a year. Do you want roads that are somewhat less? X million dollars a year. And it's really a sort of, we work together with the legislative body and city manager to determine what condition the network of roads is desired to be. That's really hard. I mean, of course, everyone says, yes, we want perfect roads, but if I showed you a perfect road and a road that rated, we use an index of 0 to 80, 0 being a failed road, 100, excuse me, failed road, 100 being a perfect road, just paved. If I showed you a road that was 80 and a road that was 75, most people can't see the difference, or even 90, you can't see the difference. So what we settled on before was that roads that were around 76 index that were felt to be really in good condition and acceptable. And many agencies, some of the bigger agencies, certainly Montgomery County, some of the other bigger counties, Loudoun County, are somewhere in the 70s. They have pavement management programs. And we're not too small to have a program like that. Our network of roads are not terribly large, but it would also benefit from having that. So that's one area that I would sort of probably change the KPI on. So I'll just go on. Another one is clean streets, objective 2, and the benchmark is sweeping 7,500 miles of streets. In looking at the records, we are last fiscal year, we were just on the money with that, just on this. We did 7,436, very close. For the first quarter of this fiscal year, we have already swept more than 4,000 miles. So it looks like we are on track to exceed that. And we are actually working on trying to develop a pilot, developing a pilot for maybe alternate side of the road sweeping. One of the problems that we have in Annapolis is due to the challenges associated with parking. It is difficult for the sweepers to sweep the curb line, the gutter line. because cars really are never really moved away from that. There are often cars often parked along the gutter line. So it becomes difficult to sweep. So we have to try to work out a way in which we can do that, because it helps our stormwater permit if we can report the amount of tonnage that we pick up from the roads, from the sweepers. And it requires some kind of alternate side of the road parking program. But it's not something that we can just roll out, in cookie cutter fashion. It really, you have to look at specific areas and try to figure out the best way to sort of do this, right? So we don't impose great hardship on the public, who we're really here to serve. So it's something that we are working on, myself and Marcia Patrick and some of the guys from services are beginning to work on that pilot. So they'll be forthcoming. Just moving on. Our third objective is well-maintained city buildings, and the benchmark was 750 building maintenance work orders completed each year. Last year we did 770, and so far the first quarter of this fiscal year we are just under 300. So it looks like again we will exceed that, and that is sort of like reflective. The amount of work orders that you do is probably indicative of the aging of the building, so that you have more items to address, right? I know we've faced some vandalism areas in some of the public, like some of the bathrooms associated with the harbor master. People have actually vented their rage on the facilities, or ripped things out of the wall, damage. So we're looking on maybe putting in more institutional grade materials to try to mitigate that. But in general, I guess due to the age of the buildings and some of the challenges we've had since that I've observed since we're here with HVAC, the cooling systems, where moisture and mold seems to have been an issue. We've had a lot more work orders this year, but we're on track with that. Going to utilities, the first goal is to provide high quality, safe drinking water to all customers. Our second goal is to provide worry-free utility services to all customers. And our third goal is to practice highly effective asset management on the utility system. The benchmarks for that objective one, which is to provide high quality, safe drinking water, is 5,000 feet of water lines scanned for leaks. Our system in Annapolis is an older system with different types of constructions over the different eras that work has been done. So some valves have proven to be problematic, but they are in service for us, with us. And whenever we have to shut down a valve, sometimes it turns out to cause hammering of the line, or some other issues with the bonnet of the valve that causes a new valve to have to be cut into the pipe, which is sort of expensive. But we are cognizant of the fact that that kind of system has leaks. So we do a lot of scanning for leaking, and I think that they do generally a good job. I'm just looking at the records that we have here. I know that our leaking program, it's not really reported on my sheet here, but I know the leakage mitigation program is sort of robust. They also, another benchmark is 300 water valves exercised and inspected each year. And we are we did like 380 some of those. So they're sort of following that. And 5,000 feet of water lines replaced every year. And that's sort of an ongoing process. Objective 2, which is implementing an effective asset management system. We've recently hired or promoted a staff person to be an assistant director of utilities. And they will, assistant superintendent of utilities, excuse me. And their job will be to develop the asset management approach. The asset management approach is similar to what I was speaking about a bit on the roads. It's whereby you're sort of taking a system-wide look at what we have. And then the way we've done it, there's a condition, the consequence of failure and a probability of failure that is sort of assessed for the entire links in all the pipes in the network. And if you had like a major, trunk line providing water, the consequence of failure to that is far higher than, say, if you had a residential feeder. And the probability of failure is tied to the material, the age, the year in which it was constructed, and things of that nature, right? So that allows us to have some kind of a rational basis for decisions, pertaining to overall maintenance of the system. The benchmarks that we have for that objective is 20,000 feet of sewer mains inspected by CCTV each year, 100 sewer manholes inspected, and 6,000 feet of sewer mains reliant or replaced each year. And
Let me interrupt you for a moment. How in general do you find the infrastructure in terms of pipes and other things here in the city of Annapolis? I mean, we've got some old pipes in the city, both for water delivery and sewer.
Generally pretty good. Generally pretty good. In fact, I've always argued or jested with some of the construction folks that years ago people knew how to build better. For instance, Washington, D.C. still has wooden pipes from the Civil War era that work better than some of the modern pipes that are installed.
Wow.
So even though materials have changed, right, the workmanship back then and the sort of like there was a real craft associated with construction. And Alderman Tierney, who has a construction background, can probably back me up on that. That was really, I've seen like old sewers built from, in some cities that were built at the early 1900s that are pristine, almost like they were built yesterday. They're brick. And they're really, really in great condition. And then you see.
Didn't they use clay tiles for the storm discharges? They combined them, storm and sewer in DC. I remember discovering that under the in a project underneath the.
That's right. That's right. But those things have held up well. So I would say that Annapolis' system is generally good. I mean, one of the concerns is the valves. The valve technology has changed. And the pressures in the system have changed, particularly if you have higher buildings. They may have, you need more pressure to lift the water to respective floors. And when you have to exercise those valves, sometimes they fall apart. So those are the big concerns, if any.
Alderwoman Tierney was actually there when they put some of those wooden pipes in.
Already now.
Alderman Payon, it's a bad week as it is. I have what you had last week tomorrow.
Oh.
Yes. So all in all, I think our system is pretty good. I mean, it's an older system, so you have to do PM, preventive maintenance work on it. But generally, it's in pretty good shape.
Mr. Johnson, if you will, let's talk about money a little bit. How much is your budget overall every year? You're the largest department except for public safety.
Well, I think that our budget, is about. Well, we have, let's see, 8.2 million is coming out of the general fund. At least that's what it was last year for the respective divisions. Now, some of our, like the sewer division, which is an enterprise fund, and the water fund, the sewer division is 6.8. The sewer fund is 6.8 million, and the water fund is 9.2 million. But those are enterprise funds primarily. There is some contribution from the fund balance for the water fund, at least it was last year. But it's sort of not a major contribution.
But theoretically, they pay for themselves. Is that correct?
Theoretically, right? More or less. If they're getting a contribution from the general fund, I think that they're almost paying for themselves. But the sewer fund pays for itself. Just looking at the book.
They are not getting a contribution from the general fund. They are self-supporting.
Oh, they are. Okay, thank you. Well, I'm sorry, I misread the document. So they're all self-sufficient. Great. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Judy. So they're all self-sufficient. They don't put any drain on the general fund.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions? Well, at this point, Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of things. Earlier, you mentioned this cross-training initiative. Is that something that is a result of the pandemic and limited funds? And is that sort of a across-the-board management directive to cross-train your staff? Maybe that's something City Manager Jarrell could speak to. It seems, I know that the law office is doing that, and it hasn't been productive. Is there time involved in the training, but it pays off?
I would say that it's not, it very likely predates the pandemic. It's just a good management practice for our division, because if you're too specialized and someone leaves or sick or goes on vacation, the work doesn't stop. The requirements of the work don't stop. So, and really, I found that it's best to sort of train people up. Like people can start at different levels of skill, but they can learn other jobs, and that sort of helps the department, so that you have a generally competent workforce that is capable of doing. People may have specific assignments that they do, but someone else should be able to sort of assist, because we never know what will come at us. We could have an emergency of some type, and maybe the person who normally does something can't really do it. If we had like a tornado or a hurricane or something like that, it's all hands on deck, and you really need everyone to sort of be able to do more or less each other's job. So it's just a good practice for PW, and we have clearly, predates me, of course. I think David Jarrell could speak more on that. He probably had a lot to do with it. But
yeah, Mike, I agree. We've been doing that for a number of years. You do it a lot in utilities because people cross between the sewer system and the water system. Like Mike said, it's all hands on deck when you have an emergency like a water break, and you just take whoever is available to work on that. But also between the general fund and the enterprise funds, between like utilities and the street crews, you end up, when promotion opportunities are available, that people cross between those two types of work. So you end up with cross-training just because they move from utilities to streets and back and forth as promotion opportunities arise. So they get cross-trained on both of those types of work. We have a lot of equipment operators, so the work is somewhat, at least the job descriptions are common between the two, but the work is much different, of course, working underground with the utilities as opposed to working on sidewalks and streets and those types of things. But and then when we have snow operations, then once again it's all hands on deck to take care of the snow and get it off the street. So everybody gets trained up on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Just one other thing on the street, the clean sweeping. I know that this has been discussed with the Truxton Heights community. I don't know if you're aware of that. They're very receptive to being a pilot on that and doing the alternate parking. And I know Hillary and I have been talking to them, and there was talk about having a clean sweep coordinator, but I think budget is an issue there. I just wanted to make a note of that Truxton Heights is very interested in being in that pilot. And
okay, I will consider, because we were actually beginning to discuss locations, so that's great that we that we have a receptive audience.
Yeah, I believe you do. So thank you, and I'm very intrigued with your life cycle analysis and what the trigger is between maintenance and repair and replacement and all that. But that's all engineering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Jim, I think you had your hand up. Okay, you can press the mute button.
But he is unmuted.
You're muted, okay. Alderwoman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Mr. Johnson, I have two questions for you this time. Number one, you indicated the pavement management program. Does that kind of also apply to sidewalks?
It can involve sidewalks. Normally, many municipalities have not included it in the first iteration of the program. They sort of work on the carriageway, the parts of the vehicles that the cars use, and then it can easily be expanded. Part of the problem is that a lot of the problem in quotes is that a lot of the condition assessment is now done digitally at highway speeds, at traveling speeds. So there are these special equipment vans that are equipped with sensors, cameras, LiDAR, different sorts of sensors. And they measure, take rapid photographs of the condition of the cracks in the pavement, cracks that our eyes can't see, but they can see it. And then they're following a Department of Defense standard, which was developed for aircraft pavements, and it applies very well to roadway pavements. And there's what's called a pavement condition index, which results from the number of defects. There's 17 different defects that are looked at, and then there's an algorithm that turns it into this index. And that is done now. You can do the same thing for the concrete pavement, which the sidewalk often is. But part of the problem is getting a piece of equipment that can do it. I mean, getting people to do it. We in Annapolis or many cities, you have hundreds of miles of sidewalk. I mean, it's a lot. It would take a long time for a group of people to walk manually and do it. So some companies are introducing smaller pieces of equipment that can travel on the sidewalk, but it's not a program that is that popular because of people using the sidewalk. That you'd have to get them off to sort of measure the conditions and so on like that. But to answer your question directly, yes, it can apply to sidewalks. It can apply to roadways and sidewalks and biker paths and whatever we choose, whatever kind of surface we choose.
Because I have a small community in my ward, Forest Villa, and I've received a couple of concerns from that community. It's 3 small streets. So they might be interested in having Public Works, you all coming over and taking a look at some challenges that they have expressed to me. Of course, I'll go to Mr. Gerald, but Public Works, I would hope, would be interested in talking with some of the residents there about that. If that comports with what you're saying, and that's okay.
Okay. And
Okay.
do you have a contact person there that I can sort of speak with, reach out to?
Yes, Miss Yvonne Brown, and I'll send you her contact information.
Okay, thank you. I will definitely contact her.
Thank you. The second question is, I know when you came on board, we had a meeting with you, and you had indicated that you were going to do a little more deep dive when it came to your staff and finding out exactly what they were interested in and how things could be better in Public Works and having that sort of relationship with them. How is that going?
I've started working. I've had a couple of meetings with the staff, and I've sort of laid out the sketch of what I would like to sort of, do with concurrence. I need concurrence from City Manager Gerald to do so. However, given the budgetary situation that COVID has placed us in for this fiscal year, it doesn't seem like it's the right time to really roll out that program, because that program is not cost-free. I mean, to make those sorts of improvements, there's going to be some kind of financial requirement associated with it. So given that budgets are tight for fiscal year 22, I have decided not to really, and I sort of discussed this with David, to not really roll it out in this fiscal year, but possibly in 23, when budgets are more normalized, when they've normalized some. But basically, I mean, staff, I've spoken with staff and they are sort of excited about it. But one of the problems is, just to put it in very simply, I think I mentioned when I spoke to you, but I didn't know Annapolis very well. But having spoken to some of the guys, that when someone is hired into public works, this is sort of like the what occurs, like the archetype, if you will, of what occurs. A person is hired into a position and they stay in that position for 10 years or longer, possibly. Now, if they are hired as part of a cohort of people of the same age, similar age, where everyone is aging and they're sort of like normally moving through and they're not sick or leaving, there really is little opportunity for them to advance. They're hired into a position, and that position, they're sort of stuck in that position, to put in, maybe not the best, but just in quotes, air quotes it, right? They're sort of in that position with little opportunity to advance. So part of that, what that does to the worker is that it sort of gives, they sort of feel that the job is not really like a worthy job. It's sort of like almost like a dead end sort of a job. And then they begin to make things up about the callousness of the management. And these are all made up things, but it's what human beings will do when faced with that. They believe that nobody cares about them, that City Hall doesn't care about them, that only the folks at City Hall benefit, and that there's a class system or a caste system within the city of which they are on the lower end of things. And none of that is really true. What is really the problem is the structure that we have is contributing to that problem. And there is a different way in which we can restructure our department that recognizes skills, that because we have very skilled workers. I mean, I make the joke with the guys, I can drive a front end loader, but you wouldn't want me to drive a front end loader. You wouldn't want to be around me when I'm driving it. I wouldn't be the operator. I'm not the kind of guy you want to be the operator, right? So an operator is a skilled guy, right? Is a skilled guy or lady. The street sweepers, if you observe them, beautiful. It's a work of art. They're very, very skilled. But our system currently does not necessarily recognize them for that level of skill, right? So the process I will have to work with the city manager and possibly with council, but certainly the city manager, to agree on what that transformation would be like for the department. And then I think that the staff are really receptive to receiving it. Now, I don't want to make it sound like everyone is on board, because whenever you make a change, there are some naysayers, some Debbie Downers, naysayers who see gloom and doom in things. And you have to try to win hearts and minds of those folks. And you will, if you get 85 or 90% of them, you've done a great job. You're not going to get everyone on board. There will be some who still will oppose it, even if it benefits them. But basically,
that's overall, beyond the 76 for the payment.
Right, there we go. Right, but I think that there would allow us to really sort of change a lot of that sort of urban legend type idea that somehow the management doesn't care about the public works workers, and so which is absolutely false. There's no truth to that at all. But I think that the system is contributing to that. So that was a long answer to say that we really are going to try to do it. I'm really going to try to implement that in 23 when our budgets are more normalized.
Thank you so much for that detailed explanation. Appreciate it, Mr. Johnson.
You're welcome.
Mr. Johnson, how do you go about setting the performance metrics for different divisions in your office?
Well, we have a lot of the metrics that are established, and the way that I would sort of, those that I would choose to change would be sort of ones that sort of feed into my sort of view of being proactive as opposed to necessarily reactive. Some things will be reactive, but if we wanted, for instance, to increase our, say, recycling rate or something like that, diversion rate, for instance, there's some proactive steps that have to be taken. Education would be a part of it. You might look at how the contractor is contributing to being careless when they collect, that they're sort of mixing and contaminating loads, things of that nature, or people necessarily understanding how to recycle or what to recycle. I mean, the recycling in the United States is aspirational. It is not, that's what it is in the public mind. In the public consciousness, it's aspirational. But in reality, it is a business. And those two, there's tension between those two worldviews. That really, everything that you throw into the blue can, cannot be recycled. And if you put things in the blue cans, for instance, that can't be recycled, when they're tipped on the floor of the MRFs, they're going to end up in the landfill. They'll be rejected and sent to the landfill. So we're really sort of making matters worse in a sense, right? In that we're sort of having two streams of garbage, one which is bona fide garbage, and one where we think it can be recycled, but it's not done properly, and we're making it into garbage. So a lot of those metrics that I would sort of develop if I chose to make changes, I think that we have some pretty good key performance indicators, but those that I would change would sort of take on my philosophy as to sort of being more proactive as opposed to reactive. For instance, the potholes, for instance, I don't necessarily like that as a metric, but it's something that I can work with until we can put our pavement management program in place. Did I answer the question adequately?
I think you did.
Okay, thank you.
Those, Mr. Cardillo, Jim, you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, your speakers aren't working, Jim. No.
Okay, I think that was sign language for the heck with it. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I just wanted to put Richard Nixon, people may not know, was also responsible for for OSHA as well. So I think it's pretty cool to know that he did a couple of great things. Just saying, little bipartisan thing there.
Yeah.
Okay. If there are no other questions, Mr. Johnson, thank you very much for being with us today and enlightening us on Public Works. We will be in touch with you. We have a bid out currently for training for department heads for performance metrics, how to set them, how to interpret them. And certainly Public Works will be a big part of that. We look forward to your participation and thank you again for being here. Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
I'm sorry, I just thought of another question. Mr. Johnson, in 25 words or less, how are we doing on recycling and doing following the proper methods for recycling in our different wards?
I think we're doing a lot better with it. We have a firm that is assisting us with the education. A lot of the problems with recycling stem from education of the consumers and the customers as to what to recycle and how to recycle. And I think that things are going well. Our contractor, one of the issues was more operational. The contractors weren't necessarily following the rules, but we sort of jumped on them a little bit firmer, and they're doing a much better job. Like I know the problem sites that I think have been pointed out, we kind of put them on a hot list and monitor those more closely. So overall, I'm satisfied with how things are going.
Do we have any PSAs out on recycling, Mr. Gerald or Mr. Johnson?
I don't know that we have. I mean, I know that the firm develops literature for like sending to homes. I haven't seen any PSAs that we have developed for Annapolis.
Mr. Gerald, do we have any PSAs?
Well,
before COVID, we were doing a citywide mailer every quarter that provided information to all our residents. The big issue with recycling is the plastic, right? Especially the film plastic, because it clogs up the sorting machines at the recycling center and causes a lot of problems. They have to shut down the plant. And so we did a big education push to try to let people know that we don't want film plastic. You remember that we disallowed the recycling to be in plastic bags any longer because that just really causes problems. So I'm not sure that we've done any recently during COVID, but we probably need to get back to that. It's been interesting during COVID that people are staying home a lot more than they did in the past, so the quantity of trash has increased accordingly. So we actually used some of the CARES money to cover that additional cost, strictly due to COVID, of more trash coming into the system than what we had before. But I agree with you. I think we need to continue with the education program that we started 5 or 6 years ago.
Mr. Gerald, how appropriate would it be for Mr. Johnson to do a PSA on our TV for our residents?
It definitely would be. Yeah, we've done those in the past. You remember?
Like a movie star.
Yeah, absolutely. That lets the citizens get to know him as well.
Sounds good. Okay, look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Yeah, I just have to say this because I've been doing some look. There is like a sweet spot, if you will, when you have enough data so that you know over time what your maintenance cost is versus your replacement cost, and ultimately you're going to need more data to do this. But I love the fact that you're looking at proactively versus what does it mean to us how much a pothole is to fix when your cost of maintenance is probably more efficient. I just really support you looking at it that way, and perhaps next time, maybe in your performance measures, showing us a graph where you discover that sweet spot where it's the best time to replace. You know what I mean? It's
I understand. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. It's engineering stuff. I'm freaking out.
Anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you very, very much for being here with us this morning, Mr. Johnson. We appreciate finding out about the Department of Public Works and a little bit about how you use the money that you get from the city every year. I guess you'll find that out perhaps in a little more detail come May or June, but thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
Mr.
day,
Johnson.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too.
Yep. Okay. Next on the agenda is old business. The first thing we have should be rather short. The Audit Committee legislation approved by the City Council on January 11th. There were a couple of amendments. I had hoped to have a hard copy of the legislation as passed this morning. I did not catch in time that I did not have that in my possession. I should have it sometime today, and I will send it out to everybody ask that it be sent out to everyone on the Audit Committee. It was passed substantially as we drafted it. There were several amendments filed by our very own Alderwoman Tierney, none of which were, they all basically involved some clarifying language. Didn't really change much of anything. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alderwoman Tierney. Maybe you could speak to that, but they were your amendments. There were 5 of them. And I know 2 or 3 of them were just totally.
You're right, changing the number of days. Am I on mute? No.
Yeah, that was the one substantive matter that I remember.
But one of the things
what we did?
It was to really align with the code. And one of the things that was still sort of not totally agreed on, but now I forget how we passed it, but there was no reason, I don't know how else to say it, there was no reason to review the reports with the finance committee and then the finance committee to the city council. But I believe Alderman Arnett, being chair of the finance committee, still believed that the finance committee should look at it first. And now I can't recollect if that was just a comment or if I don't think we revised it. I think, but I think verbally there was discussion on the finance committee still wanting to be involved. Am I remembering that correctly? Anyone?
Yeah, that's what I remembered, that he felt very strongly
Yes,
that
exactly.
it should go to the finance committee. In my position, from my audit background, is no, it should not.
No, it should not.
So I don't know how it all turned out at the end.
Well,
we
that's
didn't
an
amend
ethics consideration, is it not?
No, not really. It's audit practice.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Mr. Lyles.
Morning.
Happy to.
I would agree with that assessment. You know, the reason you have an audit committee is so that you don't have another review. The audit is the audit committee, or the audit
Is the audit
It
committee.
needs to be pristine
Yeah.
from a review standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I would,
Yeah.
you know, agree with that
Yeah.
from the member here. Thank you.
I don't think we amended the amendment, so that's the way it is on
Yeah.
paper right now. So
Okay.
We can, you know, if it comes down to it, if we need to change it, we'll do it at that time. I don't think we get any serious pushback from the council in general if there is an ethics issue involved. I mean, heck, we can. They're going to get a copy of it anyway.
I mean, they'll get a copy. So
Right.
yeah, it's just that you don't want, as Mr. Lyles has pointed out, you don't want there to be an intermediate review. It just goes to the council from the audit committee.
All right. Is there any questions? Any further comment on that? Don't just raise your hands, but speak up if you have anything, because you guys are divided on 2 pages here on my iPad, and somebody could have their hand up and I wouldn't see them right away. Okay, the next item of business is the reviewing the audit of the City Rec and Parks Department. Hopefully some of you, hopefully all of you, had a chance to review the grid that we had. Our finance director, I know, worked hard in filling that out. Ms. Dickinson, what can you tell us?
What we did, what we submitted to you was the grid that shows all of the findings and the recommendations from the audit report, and then a cover letter that the city manager wrote.
Easy to read. That was easy to read. It was thorough yet straightforward. And Jim, thank you for working on that. And
yeah, so I'll give that initial credit to Jim, who came up with the grid idea at the beginning, but we've added some columns to kind of simplify it and make sure that you can see where it references from the report. And at the far right is where we state what our planned implementation schedule and which steps we still have yet to implement and when we believe we can have that done by.
okay, yeah, I thought it was well done. I thought it was very clear. Overall, I was relatively happy with the progress we've made. There were a couple that you said we're just not going to do, and I think you had a good explanation for those. I really didn't have much of a problem. I think that it's a little disappointing that some of them we can't implement till the end of the year, but that's okay. We're moving toward it, and that's what's important.
Some of that is staffing, but also a lot of that is because we are not in full operation right now, and Rec and Parks is not fully open, and their programs are not running. So
yeah.
We're saying, have all your members come in and give pictures. Well, nobody's going in right now because they have very limited operations. So until they reopen, it's going to be hard to implement a lot of that. And get
Okay.
membership cards and pictures and things like that. And that's one of the recommendations that kind of reaches across 2 or 3 of these steps is getting the membership records up to date with pictures and cards. And then other of it is IT related, which we are going to work on. But like I said, right now we can't take any more on our plates in finance either. And until we get fully staffed, the step of reconciling the activities at Rec and Parks with the revenue that's being recorded, that's also a time-consuming step that we're going to have to make sure we have the staff to do that.
Okay. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, Dave.
Would you like to comment?
The city manager
Yeah, I
might
just
wanna
wanted to
add
comment,
some.
thanks. So this was a great coordinated effort between Director Dickinson from Finance, Brian Packland from IT, and Archie Trader from Rec and Park. The 3 of them worked together to coordinate the responses that you see. So I appreciate them for that. We also intended for this to be a living document, so we're going to update this quarterly with new dates and new statuses. So until we're complete, and then we'll have a closeout version of it when everything is completed. But that's what our intention is. It certainly isn't a dead issue now. It needs to be continued to be worked on and get all these items taken care of.
Okay. Are there any other questions about any of these? I went through it and I thought about questioning maybe some of the individual responses, but I don't know. If anybody has any questions about individual responses, by all means, let's talk about them. I thought it might get Jim.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Much better.
Thanks. Thank you very much to David and Jody for this. It's much more concise than what I had. I was all over the place. Thank you. My question is there going to be any communication back to the firm about the report?
Good question. David, Jody?
Yeah, I think there should be. We've talked about that, and I think in the past, Jim, and have agreed that we should. So we will do that. I'll take care of that.
Okay. So then
Yeah.
that would be delivered. That would be CC'd to the audit committee at some point. Thanks.
Communication regarding the findings and the responses, or communication regarding the process, the audit
I'm
process?
not asking for the content. I just want to know if any communication is coming. So I defer to you to determine the form and content. I just want to know if communication will occur.
Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Sorry about that.
No. Oh, and thank you again for making it a living document, David. Thank you. That was encouraging.
Yeah, I think so. That was my impression too. All right, let's move on. The next item of business, Jody, since you're in the batter's box, let's talk about the CAFR fiscal year 2020. You're on mute. You're on mute.
The CAFR audit is on its final stages. We were planning on having that out at the end of February, but the auditors don't think that it can get done that quickly. I spent my entire last 3 weekends trying to reconcile things and pull the items together. So they are now finishing up their audit step, and they are helping us with the report document itself. And they're concerned that within the next 2 weeks, they will not be able to do all their reviews and follow up and edits of the document. So it may be sometime in March that'll be released. This has just been a matter of us finding time to dedicate to this, as opposed to all the budget work that we've been doing for the pandemic effects.
Okay.
So it's getting pushed back later and later. I'm not very I'm not very happy with that, but, and that's a lot on our plates, but we're getting through it.
Any idea about when you would expect it to be?
We are having the auditors and I are having a call this afternoon to talk about completion, because I was hoping we could get it done by the end of the month, but they're not so sure. So.
All right, so we don't know if it's going to be a week, a month.
It won't be a week. The review process, it's quite a big document. The review process takes a while, and you have to, several things throughout the document have to be reconciled and agree to each other, make sure things are tying out. So once you pull it all together, you're hoping it all works. And there's always a lot of edits that go on in the process. And they have a 2-stage review, a partner review and I don't know what they call it, a secondary partner review, an outside set of eyes that looks at it too. So they've got a couple of levels of review, which is why it takes them a while to get their final process done as well.
So the end of March?
It definitely will be the end of March. I'm hoping it'll be sooner in March rather than later.
Okay.
I think we're close, but I don't know where they're at in their audit process either, because they were still working on some audit steps. So.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, Jim.
We need a waiver from any of the financing agencies because I think we're. Go ahead. Sorry.
We do. I have to, every time we go beyond December 31st, I get a waiver from the state and a waiver from the Governmental Finance Officers Association who run a certificate program. And they both have given me till the end of February. I've gotten those cleared. But if we decided we're going to go beyond that, I'm going to have to try to get more waivers. And it, you know, I've never had a process, a time in my career where they didn't give you a waiver, but I don't know what that means if they don't. So hopefully we won't find out and they'll extend us a couple weeks.
Thanks.
All right. Yes, Alderwoman Tierney.
Regarding that waiver, I mean, it is, from what I'm hearing, it is related to your, detouring into COVID activities as far as, alternate funding and stuff. Can that be a reason to?
Yeah, and that's what we've been telling him. And I think that we haven't been the only one asking for waivers. In the past, in years past, I think it was common for this CAFR to go out in March. But we got it back into January for the couple of years that I had done it prior. And this year, if we hadn't run into this pandemic, we would have had it out in December for sure, because my staff is picking up more work and they learned a lot the first time around, and this was their second time around at helping me pull together the document. And so I had great hopes of getting that out, but with all the extra work and having to revise the budget and the CARES Act funding, tracking and that kind of stuff, it took me away from that project. But the pandemic is pushing a lot of people's CAFRs back. I know the auditors have had this happen with other clients as well, where they've had to push it back because of all the extra work that the clients are going through in regards to the pandemic.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Phone's ringing. It's for you, Ellie.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Okay, thank you, Jody. Ms. Dickerson, excuse me. All right, let's talk about performance metrics training subcommittee. David, can you tell us where we are with the RFP, and did we get any response?
So the due date was last week, Thursday. We received 2 responses. So we need to reactivate our working group that put together the scope of services to do an evaluation of the 2 proposals. They're pretty different. One of them is a much higher cost than the other one. But we need to review them and we need to make a selection. So Katie, if you're still interested in.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. And I don't see Al, but I'll reach out to Al as well.
Al is no longer with us.
Oh, at all?
I mean, he didn't die. He's no longer with the audit committee.
I mean, the committee, okay. So.
At least I don't think he has, but.
I can jump in and help out too.
Oh, that
yeah,
would be
I actually,
okay.
Who do we have? Julia, Katie, and myself, was it? I
Yes.
think was the group. Jim.
Although he's no longer an audit committee member, I believe this was a project near and dear to his heart. Mr. Kirchner may be interested in participating, even though he's no longer an audit committee member.
I agree with you, and he.
It may be worth a phone call.
I'll talk about that in a minute.
Okay.
Well, David, when can the three of us get together? Julie, I want you involved, and Katie, if your background, I think, can be immensely helpful. Are you satisfied with the two that we had?
I have not seen them yet. They just came in on Thursday. So what the steps are is we're putting together a scoring sheet that you all will be able to use to score the proposals. And then we will send the proposals out to you so you can review them. And then we'll have a meeting to go over what your thoughts are. And we'll probably have an initial meeting to go over just kind of the scoring protocol. That should be really short. And then we'll have a second meeting to go over the scoring and see what the thoughts are about the two proposals. So
all right,
we'll get that first meeting scheduled probably this week after we get the scoring sheets put together and get those sent out. And then probably next week we can have another meeting to go over the scores.
all right, it'll be you and Brian, and is Ms. Dickerson part of that too? Dickinson? No,
I don't think she was part. Yeah,
Nope.
I don't think she.
okay.
I'm glad not to have another thing on my plate.
Yeah.
I don't know
Well-
if Assistant City Manager Farrow was in the group
Okay.
or not too.
So it'll be
Yeah, Lynn was. Yeah, she was involved. So she was a third, and she's popped on now. So I see her there. I don't think you haven't seen the proposals either, have you?
I have not yet seen the proposals, but I'm happy to make sure everybody gets what they need and set up the meeting so that we stay on task.
Okay, so you want all of us to get together this week and perhaps next week?
Yeah, we'll have a very brief call towards the last half of this week just to go over the scoring protocol. After we send everything out to you and you are familiar with it a little bit, we'll talk about how to score. And then we'll have another meeting next week to talk about the actual scores that everybody has given.
Okay. Katie, Julie, you available later this week?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. All right, and I Thursday and Friday are both pretty good days for me, so that should work just fine.
Okay, thanks, Fred. I will. I'll send an email to everyone trying to pull together a time. So, Katie and Julia, look for an email from me.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. New business. First of all, we're very much looking for a replacement for Al Kirchner. Al resigned, and we're very grateful for the help that he provided. Excuse me. I tried to talk him into staying. He is kind of withdrawing from any of his activities with the city. I think to say he's a little frustrated in general, not particularly with this committee. Well, although I think that maybe is part of it, in the sense that things haven't moved as quickly as he had wanted to, but that's not the thrust of why he resigned. I think there are other things involved, and we're very grateful for his help. He was an excellent member and certainly helped me at times, and his contributions, well, we're continuing to work on his contributions. They were very, in some respects, profound, and, you know, I think we're going in the right direction. Does anyone have anybody in mind? Does anybody know of anyone that with, you know, a numbers background that we might be able to talk to about joining the committee? If you do, please contact me. And we'll work on it. I'll work on it. It's not a great time of year to be looking toward for accountants. After April 15th, I think it'd be a whole lot easier, but I would prefer not to have to wait that long. But we'll do the best we can. I did thank Al rather profusely when he left, in addition to trying to talk him into staying. However, I will send him again a thank you note from the committee in general. And that's that. We need a substitute. Okay. Under new business, Mr. City Manager. Is there anything you can tell us about what's going on in the city, things that we ought to know?
The big thing right now is we're putting the budget together, and I'm sure Director Dickinson's going to talk more about that, but we've met with all the department heads to go over their budget submissions. We're looking at, we're talking to the unions because I think, as everybody knows, a large portion of our budget is personnel costs. We've got about a projected $7.4 million deficit for FY22, expenses above revenues. So we need to close that. And we're probably going to need to do some of that with personnel savings. So we're meeting with the unions to talk about options for that. But that's our big push right now. You know, we've got the city dock project going on too, and that's kicked off. So that's the replacement of Hillman Garage, which is scheduled to start next January, and then a year later to start the revitalization and resilience project at City Dock. So lots of meetings going on with that, a lot of public outreach. We're meeting with the Ward 1 Residents Association on Thursday to discuss the project with them, but we've met with a lot of groups. So that's the other big push that's going on in the city.
Okay. So you're going to be taking Ms. Dickinson away from working on the CAFR, are you?
Yeah, unfortunately, she's spending a lot of time on the budget as well.
That's one of the things right now. Before, I was doing a lot of work on the CARES stuff in November, December, but now January and February have been full of budget meetings and questions and issues, and in the union, you know, trying to prepare for the union meetings and answering the union's questions on the upcoming, we're trying to get their help with some of our budget issues for next year. So that's also been very time consuming. That's we just had 2 or 3 weeks of several budget meetings a day. So that takes up my day, and then the CAFR gets whatever I have left at night and on the weekends, which is why it's kind of hard to get it to get to a completion. So that is my that's my report: budget, CAFR, and besides all the other operational stuff I do every day. I'm trying to fill my position.
Are we negotiating any new labor contracts this year, David?
So we have 1 more year. The 4-year labor agreement has 1 more year left. So what we're doing is just reopening the labor agreements that we have for discussions, negotiations.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions?
Oh, I have one question.
Okay.
For Jody. Jody, were you able to find a first assistant for your office?
So I haven't No, not yet. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews, and there's a couple of candidates that that I would consider. My issue is that I haven't yet found anybody with a really solid government background, local government, state government background. It's a very specialized area of reporting, as you may know, and there's not very many people at that level looking for work. So I haven't found the exact fit. It's just now I'm trying to decide if I want to work with what I have or go back out or try to restructure the department and create an accounting manager position instead of a deputy director. So anyways, I'm going through that thought process right now with everything else going on, and don't want to hire a deputy unless I know it's somebody that could step into my shoes and run things if I go. So it's just no great exact fit right now. I'm just trying to decide which direction to go.
Sounds like a lot more training may be involved if you hire somebody without the government background.
Yeah, so that's it. You either hire as a deputy and you spend a lot of time training, which is doable, and I don't mind that. It's training right now is a little difficult since nobody can be in the office on a regular basis, and half of the staff are working from home.
Well, there are no demands on your time right now anyway, are there?
Right. Yeah. So and so that makes it hard. So if you bring in somebody that is a little short on the experience side, even though you think they can grow into it, then you end up spending a lot of time training. So that's another one of those things that I have to think about when I'm deciding to fill a position.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dickinson, had you thought about possibly re-advertising maybe as a part-time position and getting someone who may be retired with government experience?
I suppose I could. If I could get somebody who was retired, I would prefer somebody full-time. I mean, my goal is to bring in somebody and train them to replace me someday. I'm not that old, but I'm not that far away from retirement. So, I would want to try to build them into the organization, integrate them. I had thought of people that might help contractually until I can find a good candidate, but I don't. There's one or two people that I could check with, but if I advertise, I'm not sure if I would get the right people.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. We're near the end of our agenda for today. I do have a couple notes on announcements and miscellaneous. First of all, does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring up for the good of the order? Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to backpedal to the Parks and Recs matrix. And I didn't want to bring this up before because of, manpower and everything, but I just think it's important that we, because a lot of the timing is fall of 2021, where a lot of this stuff could kick in based on the pandemic slowing down. So I was wondering if we just want to put a note that we want to revisit implementation, fall of 2021 or some kind of look back. Or do you agree, Jim? Perhaps set a date, a time. Go ahead.
No, I think in terms of timing, that's better set by city management.
Okay.
I think as a committee, we can say, this is one of our preferred initiatives, and I think the city staff would need to determine how it fits into their workload as they approach a new budget season. And
it's important that we not forget about it, and that can easily happen if we don't set a date, put it on the agenda. Kim, are you with us? Perhaps you can make sure our minutes reflect that. We can.
I believe that we have a quarterly report to the council. Is that correct?
We do.
Okay, so would it be appropriate to include an update on the Rec and Parks monitoring as a component of the quarterly report to the council?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you tie those two in?
Actually,
Bingo.
Alderwoman Tierney, I don't remember what the legislation finally said about that. Wasn't that part of that we don't report?
I thought it went to annual report.
Yeah, we didn't do.
Yeah, well, maybe we should do that anyway, though, at least in that regard. You know, every council meeting, we have a few moments that we can talk about what the committee we chair has done. And I can certainly report it in some detail. I mean, sometimes we take more than a passing interest in the committee work, and I could certainly do that anytime I wanted.
Yeah.
With regard to that. Matter of fact, I may do something at the next council meeting on that.
Yeah, I just want to respect the effort. That's all. That's all. I don't want to forget about the
Yeah,
effort
well,
being done.
Okay, Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Gerald had something he wanted to add. He had his hand raised momentarily.
Okay.
Yeah, just very briefly, we had intended to update that quarterly. So we will coordinate with Kim to make sure that it gets on the agenda for that particular month. It'll probably be the end of June would be the next update.
That's what I was going to suggest.
Yeah, and then if you want to forward those updates to the full council, that might be a way to update them as well.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything? I've got one or two things. Jim, Mr. Cardillo.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments regarding Mr. Kirchner. I joined the Audit Committee as the representative from the Financial Advisory Commission in the fall of 2018. At the time, there were 3 citizen members of the committee. 1 left due to the end of a term and 2 left early. I still believe that there should be a formal recognition for these former citizen members of the committee, thanking them for their service. And when I say formal, I mean a letter from the chair, that we could at least be CC'd on.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to do that. I did that for Jared. I sent him a thank you letter. I don't have it in front of me, but it was thank you for your service. We didn't always agree, but your ideas were very helpful, and thank you for your time. Thank you for your contribution. Very truly yours. I mean, it was not a lengthy letter. I don't believe that I sent one to Julie, and I should have, and I will.
Thank you. I appreciate the informal. I just think it should be something codified as a formal recognition and then shared with the committee.
Well, I'm not sure I understand.
That's an opinion on my part.
I would agree with that. I mean, if a citizen has donated their time to serve on any committee, I think they should be formally recognized and it should be part of the record.
I guess I don't understand the term formal when I've sent a thank you letter and my name as chairman of the committee. Is what else, what different, or what else do you want me to do?
Oh, I was under the impression that this was an email that you sent. Like I said, I was looking for something that the committee would.
It was. If you want me to, type it out, snail mail type of thing, I'm happy to do that too.
However it's delivered, I just think a copy should also go to the full committee. That's all.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
The 2 items I had was, I think we kind of covered one of them at that. Well, actually, we covered one with regard to recycling, but David, if we could, or Mr. City Manager, if we could make sure we're promoting the hotline sufficiently. We're paying pretty good money to make sure that's open. And I understand why we're doing that. The optics, I think, would be terrible if we took that hotline away, but it's obviously not being used. I mean, I think it's largely not being used because I don't think there's any hanky-panky going on, and I'm very glad of that. But let's just double down. I know relatively recently, maybe last summer, you may have sent out a promotion of that again.
I think it was last September, but we can do that again. We can do that every 6 months.
Yeah, good. I was going to suggest that. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, the David, I don't know Mr. City Manager, I don't know to whom this should be directed, but the website, the Audit Committee information is quite out of date. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you, I think the council information in general is out of date. I think they're still using the same bio that I gave them 10 years ago when I was relatively new on the council. There's really no reason for that. We ought to have the membership updated, the information about our members. And that is in some small way, I think, a recognition of the work that we're doing. I mean, last time I checked, I think Julie was still on it, and I'm not sure if Jared was or not, but it's obvious that we don't update that very often, and we should. It's not just an audit committee problem. I think it's a problem for the council in general.
And perhaps other committees. I mean, if ours is outdated, maybe other committees are as well.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, I mean, I think, like I said, even our bios, the council member bios are not up to date. And but my main concern here is our committee. So if you could have somebody take a look at that, Mr. City Manager, I would appreciate it.
We will, and I see that Ms. Raftovich has her hand up. So
yes, I'm happy to address that if you'd like.
All right.
So I keep the internal sheet updated as soon as there are changes, and then it gets updated on the website, usually every 2 months. So if there's stuff out of date that gets missed, let me know. But it's
okay.
Usually
I'll check.
Go back and update them.
I find the website. Well, it's not the easiest website in the world for me to use. And I think most other of my colleagues feel the same way, but I'll check and see what we come up with. Thank you. Alderwoman Pendel Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Raftovich, would it be helpful if those who have changes all submit them to you in writing?
Yes. Yeah, it should be, like I said, my internal sheet gets updated immediately. There's a lag because I need to wait for the formal paperwork before we update the public website. So I usually wait until I get my updates from the clerk's office, making it official that people are appointed. But I update the internal sheet as soon as I see it on video.
Okay. And then is it someone in IT then who actually does the upload to the website?
No, it's somebody in our office that does.
Oh, okay. So you have control over that.
I can do them if something gets missed, I can do it anytime.
Gotcha.
But generally, we wait on that 2-month cycle just to make sure everything's official before we put it up online.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else?
Oh.
Yes, Ms. George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to clarify a statement I made earlier. We were talking about reporting and whether it should go directly from the audit committee to the council. And I referenced that it's due to audit practice, but it's also audit standards, which is the real compelling reason why we do it.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Do I hear any motions? Mr. Cardillo.
A motion to close the meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All against can sit here for the rest of the day. The meeting is hereby closed right at 9:30.